Hey guys, welcome back to a new video on this channel. Axel looking very sharp today, but you kind of remind me of my physics teacher or maybe even my German philosophy teacher. Hey Axel, something along those lines. Hello Axel.
Yeah, now you have to show off that you receive the higher blessings of education here. And I, a poor secondary school student after ninth grade at the Realschule, can only try to compete with a bit of teacher-like banter. But my dear, your physics teacher probably just had good taste, because nothing beats a good tweet. You, as someone from England, should actually know that.
The judgmental part, that wasn't judgmental, but it does have teacher vibes for me, that's for sure.
Is that a good thing or more of a bad thing? Write it in the...
That depends on the teacher behind it, not necessarily on the tweet itself. Yes, but Twitter X. Also a big topic for Greta Thunberg, whom we'll see today. We have an article here, and today it's about Greta Thunberg. There were some disagreements on one of the ships she was on. And she left a committee.
Don't give away too much yet. Don't give away too much yet. That's supposed to be a little treat where we can be a little bit spiteful, you know, a bit mean. But
yeah, because that's how we... Exactly, Axel, we've been saying this for so long. Yes, but I'd like to, Axel, before this gets misunderstood. Me too. I don't like starving children either. I don't like war. The images are terrible. And Israel also has to reflect at some point on what's happening here. Yes, you can criticize Israel's politics, but not its entire existence. You must
even criticize them. Today, I'm an outspoken friend of Israel. I can only be ashamed of what I once stood for. That's why some memories come back when you hear the rhetoric of Greta Thunberg and some Israel haters who aren't looking for a reasonable way for both sides to live together. Instead, they demonize Israel, insult Israel across the board, randomly lash out against Zionism, and that's why, even in leftist circles, she has now rightly earned the reputation of being an Israel hater. You always have to differentiate, which is incredibly difficult with this highly complex and emotionally charged topic.
Exactly, but we don't want to go into depth on that today. Two sentences.
I think they're important.
Two, I'm counting.
2 sentences. What is happening right now in this conflict, yes, deserves criticism, must be criticized. Israel must show restraint there. I am also not a supporter of Benjamin Netanyahu and his policies. But that does not justify anti-Semitism directed at Israel. That does not justify the delegitimization of Israel. And there is not just one party to blame here, but we must not forget. The root cause of the current conflict is rooted in the barbaric attack by Hamas in October 2 years ago. And we should not and must not lose sight of that.
Exactly, so we'll check that off. Guys, let's make a short format. I'll slow down Axel here since we've already mentioned this several times. Then you look at all the input from us. But here it's about today's developments concerning Greta Thunberg, not the whole Israel-Palestine conflict and such. That's why Axel has a Taz article here, dated November 13, 2023. And Axel, we ask you with your gentle voice to read this out to us. Let's go. You should...
Yeah, all right. Barbarian oil now. Sorry, I just needed a moment to practice. If anyone's wondering, like, don't you have anything current? This is supposed to be a daily news format. This is just the backstory for better context. I also think it's really important to praise the Taz here. Yeah, then no one can blame us for anything. Now you've got some Springer outlet again, like Die Welt or something. They're right-wing themselves. Of course they're going to write in that direction. But here, the left-wing newspaper par excellence, yes, the most well-known and popular one, has published a very good article about Greta Thunberg, which is why I want to read it out loud. And also to explain what kind of development this young lady has unfortunately gone through in recent years. So from environmental activist to anti-Israel activist, criticism of Fridays for Future now means being labeled an Israel hater. Now, the German climate scene is distancing itself. Friday's initiator Greta Thunberg is once again being accused of anti-Semitism after an appearance in Amsterdam. The German branch of the climate movement Fridays for Future has once again distanced itself from initiator Greta Thunberg and other international activists. Through Greta Thunberg's recent statements, we feel confirmed in the course we've taken over the past few weeks. The activists wrote to Taz on Monday, Request: we have suspended the processes with the international network. Fridays for Future is an independent organization in Germany and has outgrown Greta as an individual. That's quite a clear distancing, isn't it? In the past, people were glad that they could refer to Greta Thunberg as an icon of the climate movement and happy when she appeared at their events. And now it's already very distant. Well, she's long outgrown that, but let's move on. Thunberg attended a climate protest in Amsterdam on Sunday. With a black and white Palestinian scarf around her neck, she said that the climate protection movement has a duty to listen to the voices of those who are oppressed and who are fighting for peace and justice. Then Thunberg wanted to hand the microphone to a woman who was also wearing a Palestinian scarf and claimed that Israel is committing genocide in my country. Some participants couldn't handle it. A man in a green rain jacket jumped on stage and shouted into the microphone, "I came here for a climate demonstration, not to hear political opinions." He was dragged away during a scuffle. Greta Thunberg went back to the microphone and chanted, "No climate justice on occupied land, no climate justice on occupied land." Axel's request to rename. Oh, did you want to speak? Yes.
Yes, briefly. Maybe both of us. Yes, you can also get lost in a good way. And well-intentioned into something bad, right? So that's how it is.
I might make myself unpopular here, but I was never a fan of Greta Thunberg. I just wasn't. Only now has the point come where my absolutely likable, universally accepted opinion is allowed to rub some people the wrong way. I think I've earned enough trust now. I've never been a fan of Greta Thunberg. I always thought her behavior was extremely exaggerated, and I never understood why she was put on such a pedestal. For example, I found it unbearable when she stood there as a privileged child with wealthy parents and millions in the bank. She screams into the microphone really loudly saying, "Not only have you stolen my childhood," that's what I mean. That makes me think of child soldiers, of child slaves in sweatshops, of child sex slaves whose childhoods have truly been stolen, but not about a millionaire's child like that, who really grew up in the best environment, with the best opportunities, far away from any problems in the world, and then acts out with rage and anger, as if something had been taken from her in her childhood.
Let's go back to what I said, because sometimes people don't understand that. People act from their own perspective, just like many extremists act from their own attitude. We are in the right, we are the good ones, and that's why I am allowed to do this and that, and I have to point that out. And with the full conviction that I am right, I have the truth, and I really believe we are the good ones. Without it, you can already start to hear it at some point.
No more shades of grey, just black and white. Those are the three stages that I also like to explain to young people. Using the example of Anakin Skywalker, who became Darth Vader. He didn't begin wanting to be the bad guy, oppress the world, or become a villain. Instead, he had idealistic aspirations, but these idealistic aspirations were presented with a very strong impulse for truth. No shades of grey were visible there, so people kept their distance. But then self-reflection doesn't follow. Then there isn't a moment where you say, wow, maybe I'm overdoing it. Maybe I should learn to listen to other opinions, to accept them, to let them flow into my worldview. You start thinking they don't get you, they're ignorant or manipulated, part of the problem, and now you must oppose them too.
And then
we are right in the middle of extremism. The second point is actually this rejection by the environment through missionary behavior. First idealism, then missionary behavior. Unable to handle criticism, set boundaries, and instead just insisting, I'm right anyway. If I'm right, everyone else is wrong. Now I must fight anyone not on my side, since if you're not with me, you're against me.
Go ahead.
Okie dokie, demand for renaming German Fridays. It's not the first time that Thunberg has expressed criticism of Israel. Last month, she had already voiced support for the Palestinians on social media. Initially, without referencing Israeli victims of the Hamas massacre on the 7th October, which left around 1,200 dead as the trigger for the current conflict. That too is typical. That's when the conflict, which is highly complex, gets simplified. Only one thing is seen, a stark black and white picture is painted. There are the evil perpetrators and there are the poor victims. There's no attempt at all to keep a general perspective on it or to see how things can get back on track. That's typical for this scene as well. Shades of grey are not welcome. On the international Instagram account of Fridays for Future, there was also a multi-part post in which it was claimed, among other things, that Western media are brainwashing people to create solidarity with Israel. The post has since been deleted. That is,
Of course, all kinds of Fridays for Future activists were regularly seen in all the media. Luise Neubauer. Yes. Where weren't they? The media was always quick to cover them and everything was good enough.
yeah, but it's already a pretty intense speech that she gave here. So when people talk about the Western media, yeah, who are the Western media anyway? The Western media are brainwashing people to create solidarity with Israel. That's Nazi talk, that's conspiracy theorist talk, that's anti-Semite talk. Back when I was a Nazi, I would have celebrated that, taken a screenshot right away and said, aha, even the Fridays for Future people are now realizing what's going on here. The civilization of Zionist media, the Jewish manipulated politics that wants to force us into solidarity with Israel, aha, even now the curtain falls at last and they're seeing how the world truly is. Very good, Axel. I don't want to.
I have to give you a little, the article is still very long.
It's okay. The German Fridays, the format
Is not quite established yet.
You're interrupting me, so I have to start over. That's how it is here. The German Fridays activists quickly distanced themselves. Joseph Schuster, president of the Central Council of Jews in Germany, already felt that wasn't enough back then. He called for a complete separation of the Germans from the international movement, including a name change. After Thunberg's appearance in Amsterdam, Volker Beck, former Green Party member of the Bundestag and now president of the German Israeli Society, also spoke about the end of Fridays for Future as a label for ecology. Thunberg is now a full-time Israel hater, he wrote on the short messaging service X, formerly Twitter.
Axel Gans, a quick input. It's always a risk, also from your perspective, to tie an entire movement to one person. We see that too. Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance and Sarah Wagenknecht only want to change their name. However, sticking to the initials is risky since people are fallible.
They can also get carried away thinking everything depends on them and they can take whatever they want. Personality cult is always bad, and if a movement is centered on just one person, the seed of failure is already planted. German Friday's partners are satisfied with the German group's response so far. For example, the Verdi Labour Union did not question its long-standing cooperation with the climate group. The statements made by some of the international actors from Fridays for Future are absolutely unacceptable. However, this does not change the fact that there is still an urgent need for political action on climate protection, says a spokesperson when asked. In this respect, we welcome the unequivocal clarifications from Luise Neubauer, who has clearly distanced herself from Greta Thunberg and others regarding the German position on the Middle East conflict. We're not talking about climate protection anymore. Volker Kwaschnik, professor of regenerative energy systems at Berlin University of Applied Sciences and Scientist for Future co-founder, shares a similar view. The scientist says Greta Thunberg has discredited herself. However, the German activists have clearly distanced themselves, he told the TARS. The discussion played into the hands of the political right. That's a feast for them. Discussion has shifted from climate protection to Greta Thunberg's anti-Semitism. Most of the female colleagues I talk to are annoyed because of this.
I think I would link the article here under the video because, of course, we have to address the current issue. Absolutely. It will
become clear what we want to express with this article. So, the fact that Greta Thunberg has long disqualified herself as an Israel hater, even among her own supporters, and has experienced clear distancing, did not stop her from continuing. Also, amid the cheers of many pro-Palestinian leftists who are not bothered by her Israel-related anti-Semitism.
I'm showing Greta Thunberg's Instagram page, 15 million followers. She's very active in activism. And this is her second attempt to get from the Mediterranean to Israel-Palestine. This is the second attempt.
That kind of reminds me a bit of back when Martin Sellner had his chartered boat where refugees were supposed to be stopped, supposedly smuggler gangs. For them, this is mainly a propaganda vehicle now. It's absolutely clear that Israel won't let them through. Its clear images can be generated there showing Israeli military stopping them from advancing with their people. That will be portrayed as Israel blocking aid, which is the propaganda coup they're trying to trigger.
We must also not forget that Israel, like all other countries in the world, has sovereign rights over its coastline. And I think 12 kilometers from the shore is then the territorial waters of the country. Is that correct? Or is it 12 nautical miles? So it's something like that, I think. Then international maritime law applies. That's risky half knowledge. Anyone can comment, but that's just what I've heard. Yeah, pictures are meant to be produced.
Pictures are made and effective. It worked the first time, but unsurprisingly, Israel didn't allow it through. Back then, it was said Israelis didn't want to help and were blocking relief efforts with Zionists blamed. That's pure propaganda, so if she really wants to help, maybe she should start small and trying to put herself in the spotlight, using her propaganda to supposedly do something good for the people there who are truly suffering from hunger and hardship.
This is essentially just anti-Israel propaganda. And Axel, you yourself describe yourself on your Instagram channel as autistic and bipolar. Yes, just because you once took up the topic of climate and were an activist there, doesn't mean you're automatically also a religion and politics activist, right? No. And can you really understand all those topics? That's what we always say. We give our input, but we don't fully grasp everything. We're neither political scientists nor sociologists. We do all this based on our own experience. These are our own personal biographies, our own experiences that we look at from the outside and that we engage with when it comes to politics. We're actually just now getting to the topic. And there was a bit of, we just saw beef commercials from the beef bandits. There was a bit of beef on the boat. We all agree, don't we?
Yes, but it's actually a bit surprising to me that now so many left-wing activists who stand up for women's rights and are active for equality for homosexuals and trans people are now running into problems with Muslim activists who, coming from the ranks of Hamas and other organizations like Hezbollah, aren't exactly known for supporting such a diversity of topics. That's why I'm curious to see what news this report will bring us now.
Axel, thank you very much for this report from the world turmoil aboard the Freedom Flotilla. And we'll take a look at that. Then feel free to give us a little input on it. Axel will be giving us his input here today anyway. Thank you very much for that.
Just a month ago, the Freedom Flotilla, which activist Greta Thunberg joined, set out to supposedly deliver aid to the Gaza Strip. But there seems to be unrest within the crew. Greta Thunberg was kicked off the board due to disagreements. What?
And in protest against the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer participants, a coordinator even left the fleet. The self-proclaimed Gaza aid fleet seems to be getting itself into stormy waters more and more.
I'm sorry, I'm grinning right now. And Axel, I'm grinning. And you can interpret it that way because we've been saying it for so long. NEE, Queers for Palestine.
Yes.
That's it. Unfortunately, that's how it is. Yes, you also make yourself complicit. You get into bed with anti-Semites. You associate with homophobes. Anti-Western, anti-human, anti-everything, occasionally even anti-Christian people in a backhead.
Anti-Democrats getting into bed with anti-Democrats. Yes, and that's what happens as a result. It's anything but surprising. People see this and think it's bad. They're trying to bring aid, but now you're laughing that it's not working. That's why I made it clear. This is not primarily about aid supplies. This is about a propaganda show that ultimately...
Aid supplies, absolutely, but not through Greta Thunberg and other people who are extremely radical. That's one thing. In my opinion, this needs to be coordinated internationally. Israel also needs to be put under pressure. Nations and the United Nations need to apply pressure regarding aid delivery. Maybe a United Nations peacekeeping mission is needed, but we still need to see what's possible. But here on this boat, yes, they've been on the move for several months. I think there was even a breakdown once, an alleged drone attack over Morocco. And yes, it just keeps dragging on and on. And at some point, I stopped following these updates with you because after a while, I almost got bored and thought, wow, what is this? Is this somehow like Big Brother on this boat? Yeah?
Gaza flotilla departs Barcelona at end of August. Here, Greta Thunberg and her pro-Palestinian fellow activists were still in a good mood. But after 24 days at sea, things on board are tense. So tense that Thunberg decides to call it quits. The Swede is out of the leadership committee and changes ships. Of course, this should in no way affect my commitment to the Palestinian cause. And the urgency of this mission cannot be overstated. Apparently, the perfect world is meant to be maintained externally.
Yeah, it's always a problem to have real talk and then just accept that's how things are. Something's broken here because of homophobic statements, because of the attitude towards lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities. That's just too weak for me. No, I mean, for a person who's so much in the public eye, you know, I mean, with what happened there. No, I mean, otherwise she's usually very eager to share on social media, also in front of any camera she can get in front of. And then when it comes to leaving the committee, that's an important step. You know, she's once again the face of this group, right?
She even changed ships. Yeah, so if I say, okay, leaving the leadership committee because we've argued about fundamental issues, that would be one thing. But if I even leave the ship to sign on to another one, that's really something. That basically means they can't be together in close quarters anymore at all and have to pull the emergency brake, right?
Arguments, intrigue, and racism have always been part of daily life at sea. The fact that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, plus activists are on board really doesn't sit well with the Muslim fellow activists. The Muslim activists say that the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer plus agenda is incompatible with Islamic beliefs.
What? Philip Schlaffer, that's the first time I'm hearing that. I mean, that really surprises me now, right?
Yes.
Honestly, you can laugh about how reality just falls apart and how they can't even start thinking anymore. We've discussed this a lot, especially with pro-Palestine demonstrations like Queers for Palestine and Trans for Palestine. And then you have people who actually stand for total freedom and total equality when it comes to religion, gender, and sexual identity, marching together with people who hold an absolutely dictatorial, historically religious fundamentalist, and absolutely anti-gay, anti-trans, and anti-women worldview. There, it's simply the common enemy, Israel. So they march together without even considering what it actually means if these people they're supporting, who are seen as freedom fighters,
were to actually come to power. Axel, let me throw something else into the room, into your space, to get your opinion on it. Guys, you know, there's a difference if Greta meets with other activists from the non-heterosexual, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community, and then stands up for Palestine. You know, you meet at a demonstration, you spend a day together, you can overlook differences there and say, well, they're standing up for our cause. Yes, maybe we're also using them for reach, for media attention, and we're approaching it very strategically. But that's different from spending 4 weeks on a boat. When suddenly you see two men kissing or two women kissing there, or someone expresses themselves politically, speaks out about rights, about women's rights. How do you see that in your state if you get a state which some countries have now recognized? Yes, that's different than meeting at a demonstration. A few sentences exchanged or spending 4 weeks together somewhere, that's really different. I'm sorry, but we've been saying for years that many leftists often let themselves be used by Islamists. That's just the way it is. They don't even realize it, even though they're dealing with Islamists who actually have more in common with right-wing extremists than with any leftist. But it's so classic. We stand up for the religion and the people. I don't care if they're Islamists or how they treat others. It just feels good, and that's what matters. We've said that for years, and there's a difference, right, Axel?
Yes, of course, obviously. And that's exactly what I mean. The dishonest thing is when people here take sides with one party that's highly problematic itself and the other side is completely demonized. Yes, because Israel, despite the far-right Netanyahu, is still the only functioning democracy in the Middle East where there is equality, religious freedom, and freedom in general. Yes, regardless of your sexual identity and sexuality.
Even now, demonstrations against Netanyahu and the government occur freely. They aren't banned or suppressed. And you have to say that's also what democracy is, right?
Queers for Palestine. On the Gaza Flotilla, this kind of activism apparently has no place.
That people are surprised that queer people, meaning gays, lesbians, and trans people, are not tolerated in Gaza under Hamas. And of course, those who are spreading this Hamas propaganda with the flotilla also want nothing to do with queer for Palestine. At the same time, it just shows that these people are so preoccupied with themselves. It's clearly not about Gaza.
It's not surprising that the Israeli government says the Gaza Flotilla organizers have close ties to Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. The self-proclaimed Gaza Aid Flotilla, around Greta Thunberg, it seems to be sinking itself more and more. That could soon come to an end. Israel has already announced that it will prevent entry into the combat zone.
Well, how should Israel respond to that?
So, as I said, we're dealing here with people who are not just peaceful activists, but who are part of terrorist networks, who support terrorist networks. This whole freedom flotilla is nothing but a Hamas propaganda machine. Israel can only say, listen folks, this is where it stops, and God forbid. If you send in a combat mission and someone gets shot in the confrontation, then there will be a lot of images against Israel again.
Axel, we've said it for years. Greta Thunberg doesn't convince me. It's only for those interested. Her channel has a lot of talk, but constantly discussing Zionists feels insulting to me. Anyone who talks about Zionism is often involved with her. And for me, Greta Thunberg is simply an extremist in many areas by now. I'll just assume that about her. I don't want to know what they do now. Because to me, it feels like they've almost mentally left the democratic ground. But that's just my feeling and doesn't have much to do with the truth. I feel that when I look at it, I see an angry young woman. I don't know if I would give her the suitcase too, where you could write bomb on it. I don't know.
What you can excuse her for is that she's autistic, she's bipolar, and she's open about it. But then it should also be clear to her and her environment that people like that have a problem seeing the whole picture, seeing things without emotion. And even back then, I thought it was very, very wrong that this girl, this angry girl, suffering from serious illnesses, was made into such an icon. She was invited to see the Pope, to the World Economic Summit. She went everywhere as an environmental activist and was hyped up like some kind of environmental Jesus Christ. That left its mark on her too, which I think was a major setback, that when she spoke out on other issues, she suddenly didn't get the same support as before and even got pushback from her allies. That also had an effect. That just makes you angry and upset again. Now they want to turn their backs on me and won't listen. It has been very, very difficult from the beginning, what was done with this girl, and it's a hard fall that she has taken now.
So to speak. We will continue to observe it. We will almost make it exactly to 30 minutes. Check out the book by Dear Axel Writes, I Was the Hater from Cologne. We're still in the discovery phase of this short format. Both of us are still having a bit of a hard time, but we've only been doing this for not even a week yet. Guys, of course, we're trying to stick with it. Feel free to always send us constructive criticism. Thank you to everyone who supports this in all the different ways. I didn't want to interrupt Axel so much, but I'm just trying to get into the format like Axel. Sorry for interrupting, Axel.
Very, very gladly. That's what you're here for, after all. You have to have some purpose here, right?
I have to have some purpose too. Thank you. You know we can support that. It's at 29:57. Ahoy from the coast, 30 mina.